We'll move to question time, and I'm calling Senator Bragg.
Thanks very much, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, I should say. Senator Gallagher, how are you? That's good. I'm very pleased to hear that. Given the higher than expected inflation rate announced today, will the government commit to limiting spending growth below inflation?
Senator Gallagher.
Thank you very much, and I thank Senator Bragg for the question and for remembering there's other people in the chamber, other ministers that can answer questions. Yes, look, I've just been looking at the inflation figures that have been released today, the monthly inflation figures, and the rate of 6.8% in the month of February, which is lower than the 7.4% rate reported in January 2023. But I don't think it's any surprise, and I've been saying for some time in this chamber, that one of the significant challenges facing the budget and the decisions that we are taking in relation to the budget is how we deal with the inflation challenge, how we provide sensible cost of living relief where we can without adding to the inflation challenge across the economy. And that requires us to show some restraint where we've got revenue upgrades, to look at how we bank those upgrades. And as you know, in October we banked 99% of those upgrades in the first 2 years, and I think it was 92% over the 4 years. So that gives you an indication of the fiscally responsible way that we will go about making these decisions, and we're doing that against a backdrop of increasing pressures on the budget, whether it be from defence, from the NDIS, from health, from aged care, from some of the terminating measures, the cleaning up the mess that we are also working through and have been talking about in this chamber this week. So, you know, you'll see the budget when it's released, but the question that Senator Bragg asked of me is certainly front and centre of the mind of all of us who participate through the ERC process.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Bragg for supplementary.
Thanks very much. Following the 10th consecutive interest rate rise, the government has committed $45 billion in off-budget spending. How much of this will be spent in the next financial year?
Minister.
Thank you. Well, those provisions were made in the October budget and have been factored into the figures that were released as part of the economic forecast for the October budget. Obviously, we, in relation to the NRF, that has passed the parliament with rewiring the nation. We are moving on that through the Powering the Regions Fund. When the Housing Australia Fund hasn't passed the parliament, so we won't be in a position to establish that fund until that passes the parliament. There will be some expenditure, I would imagine, once those funds are up and running. We'll report that in the normal way, as you would expect, once those decisions have been taken. But I would say that the actual provision for those has been factored into the budget and the economic forecasts outlined in October.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Bragg, second supplementary.
Thanks very much. Minister, did the International Monetary Fund find that off-budget spending items like the National Reconstruction Fund fuel inflation and should be avoided? Why won't the government follow the IMF's advice?
Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, and I thank Senator Bragg for the question. I don't have the IMF report in front of me, but I think those opposite have, well, I don't want to say they've verbaled the IMF, but I think they have used the IMF report for selectively for political purposes. I think my recollection of the IMF's from the IMF's report was that they talked about being mindful of the impact of establishing funds and being cautious about the use of them, and that's exactly what we were doing. And in fact, if we go back and have a look, when you were in government, you established quite a number of those funds in a similar way that we are doing now, and we are using them to drive a common good, whether it be in housing, whether it be in manufacturing jobs, or actually ensuring we've got an energy grid that actually works for the renewable energy future that Australia will have to have.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Stewart.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Industry and Science, Senator Farrell. Yesterday, members of the government and the crossbench came together to support the passage of the National Reconstruction Fund Corporation Bill in this place. It was a great win for manufacturing. Can the Minister outline how the passage of the NRF will support Australian manufacturing?
Minister Farrell.
Thanks, President, and it's good to get some questions, at least from my own side. The other side seem to have given up on me, but
you outlasted them, Don.
I know you've got a great. I know you've got a great interest in rebuilding manufacturing in this country. And last night, the Senate passed the National Reconstruction Fund Corporation Bill, and this is one of the largest investments in manufacturing in Australia's history. This is the Albanese Labor government's first step in rebuilding Australia's industrial capability, and I was pleased to see Senator Colbeck last night picking up on this very point and making it on a number of occasions, so that we can be a country that makes things again. Australia should be a country that makes things. Australia must be a country that makes things, because making things here will help secure Australia's future prosperity and drive sustainable economic growth. The National Reconstruction Fund will leverage Australia's natural and competitive strengths by providing finance to projects in priority areas. It will make investments in projects that will support, diversify and transform Australia's industry in agriculture, forestry and fisheries, in resources, in transport, in medical science, in renewable and low emissions technology, in defence capability and enabling capabilities. The National Reconstruction Fund will revitalise and strengthen our local supply chains to ensure that we have our own industrial and manufacturing capabilities. It will invest in businesses so that they can invest in their workers, developing the skills that we need now and into the future. We got to this point by working together with the crossbench, and I congratulate them, because when the coalition stepped back, the crossbench had
Thank
to
you,
step
Minister.
up.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Stewart, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister Farrell. Our government actively engaged with the Greens and the crossbench on the legislation. And following this engagement, the Senate agreed to a number of amendments to the bill. How will the amendments to the bill help create a stronger future for Australian industry?
Thank you, Senator Stewart. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Stewart once again for her very salient question. The amendments the government made to the bill addressed a number of other important matters that have informed our design of the National Reconstruction Fund from the outset. Attracting private sector investment, not crowding it out. Achieving Australia's greenhouse gas emissions reductions target and decarbonisation. Creating secure jobs and a skilled and adaptable workforce. Enhancing resilience in Australia's supply chains and, of course, encouraging the commercialisation of Australian innovation and technology. In making these amendments, the government reaffirms that one of our most important outcomes of the National Reconstruction Fund will be the creation of secure, well-paid jobs in key industries that build on our national strengths.
Senator Stewart, second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. Labor is actively working with industry and workers to rectify the economic mess left by the former government. How will the passage of the National Reconstruction Fund Corporation Bill help create secure jobs in this country?
Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Stewart, again for your prescient question there. When we proposed the National Reconstruction Fund in March 2021, Labor said we were going to do this to rebuild secure work. Because we know a strong domestic manufacturing industry provides opportunities for Australians to make a meaningful, high-skilled contribution to our nation's future. Nearly 85% of jobs in manufacturing are full-time, and it's a shame that the Coalition didn't get this message. They were opposed to creating new jobs in their communities. They were opposed to local manufacturers, just like they were opposed to the car industry in this country. The only jobs they're ever interested in are jobs for their mates. With the passage of the National Reconstruction Fund, the Albanese Labor government will create job communities can be built around, especially in regional, remote and outer suburban Australia.
The time has expired. Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. The October budget forecast a 56% increase in electricity bills for Australian households over the next 2 years. Does the government believe the actual increase will be higher or lower than forecast?
Thank you, Senator Colbeck. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, we will update the figures. We will update the figures in the budget in the normal way, as we do. They were released in October. They will be updated in May. I would remind the chamber that the efforts that we put in place to reduce those unacceptable increases in electricity prices caused by a decade of delay, dysfunction and failure to land 22 energy policies. 22, released them all, didn't land one of them. So after creating the problem, then hiding the problem before the election, we're now in the world where you stand in the way of any solution to this. Indeed, in December, when we did bring forward— I've already answered your question.
Minister, resume your seat. Senator Colbeck.
It was a point of order on direct relevance. Does the government believe the actual increase will be higher or lower?
Senator Colbeck, the minister is being relevant to your question. Minister Gallagher, please continue.
Thank you. And I answered the question, President, when I did. I answered the question when I said those figures will be updated in the normal way. Senator Colbeck obviously wasn't listening when I directly answered his question when I first got to my feet. But I would also say that the efforts we took in recalling the parliament based on those results in the October budget to put downward pressure on those increases was opposed by those opposite. So the gall of you to come in here and say and feign concern over electricity prices when you opposed the legislation that put in place the parameters that put downward pressure on those prices.
Minister, please resume your seat. Senator McGrath, I have called the chamber to order 3 times and you kept interjecting extremely loudly. That is disrespectful and disorderly. When I call the chamber to order, it includes every single person in this place. Minister, please continue.
Thank you, President. I must say I am finding the level of interjections towards me quite confronting this question time. I feel very affronted by it. So thank you for your protection. But the gall of these people— Senator Henderson, is that you yelling at me?
Minister, the time has expired. Order, Senator Henderson. Senator Watt, order across the chamber. Senator Colbeck, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Why did the government break its promise made on at least 97 occasions prior to the 2022 election to cut electricity bills by $275?
Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much. And the government is getting on with implementing the Powering the Nation plan, which we took to the election. The legislation that's currently before the chamber and has been debated into the early hours of this morning and through the day is part of that. That is about dealing with the significant challenges we have in transitioning to a renewable energy superpower that we would like to be, which we will do without your help. to ensure that we are moving to renewables, that we're rewiring the grid, that we're supporting households with the transition, that we're supporting jobs in the transition, that we're supporting regions in the transition, that it's an orderly transition, or as orderly as it can be after a decade of delay and dysfunction from those opposite. That's what we're doing. We're doing exactly what we said we would do, and where we're dealing with the challenges of the day, like a war in Ukraine, that's increased prices around the world. We're dealing with that despite the opposition from you.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Colbeck, second supplementary.
Thank you. I'll try again. Why did the government break its promise, made at least 97 occasions prior to the 2022 election, to reduce electricity bills by $275?
Thank you, Senator Colbeck. Minister.
Senator Colbeck refers to the Powering Australia plan, which we are implementing. So I reject the assertion being put forward by Senator Colbeck. And I would similarly say to those opposite, why did you hide the electricity increase before the election? What was that about? Was it because you didn't want to tell people? Was it because the member for Hume actually didn't want people to know that under your watch, with all of the energy leaving the system and not enough being replaced, that when you got confronted with the news that there was going to be a significant increase in electricity prices, what did the member for Hume do? Well, he hid it. He hid it until a few days after the election. We are being upfront with the Australian people where there are challenges, and we've seen them, and we saw them in December, we saw them in the budget. We responded responsibly and carefully, and all you did, all those opposite did, was oppose it, just like they oppose everything else we do.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Faruqi.
My question is to Minister Watt, representing the Minister for Education. Minister, every week I hear heartbreaking stories about students struggling to put food on the table, pay for medicine, afford a train or a bus ticket, pay bills, or to pay rent. One 19-year-old Queensland University of Technology student says she has not eaten fresh fruit and vegetables for at least a month and relies on instant noodles. She struggles to afford period products. At UNSW, hundreds of students are lining up in queues for free food. This is causing intolerable financial stress and mental health impacts for students. Can you look these students in the eye and tell them that you can spare $254 billion for the wealthy and $368 billion for war machines and nothing for them?
Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Well, I reject the suggestion that our government is doing nothing to assist students or low-income earners generally. And in fact, it wasn't that long ago that we brought the parliament back to support legislation, for instance, to support price caps on coal and gas prices and provide energy price relief for low-income earners, including the very students that we're talking about. We also, of course, the Albanese government, delivered cheaper medicines starting on the 1st of January this year, which students, among others, would benefit from, pensioners, many others would benefit from. As I recall, it was the first reduction in PBS prices that people were paying, if not ever in Australian history, then certainly for a very long time.
Senator Ruston.
And that is in addition to a much broader range of cost of living relief that the government is providing. Now, one of the things that you pointed out, Senator Faruqi, was that many of these students are renters, and I certainly remember my renting days as a student when you don't have a lot of money. And as I pointed out on a number of occasions this week to the Greens, there's a very simple thing that the Greens could do to assist meet the need for more social and affordable housing in Australia, and that is to back the Housing Australia Future Fund that our government is putting forward. The hypocrisy of the Greens is yet again on display when it comes to housing. On the one hand, they're out there claiming that we need more social and affordable housing. They're claiming that we need to see support for renters, that we need more housing for renters. And then when there's a government that's actually prepared to do something on this topic, what do the Greens do? They say, no, it's not good enough. They vote against it again. So it is actually within your power to do something about this. about support for affordable housing to bring down the cost for students, but instead you'd rather have a protest out the front and yell at people. That's not the way to help people.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Faruqi, first supplementary.
Minister, students are rushing from job to job, but still barely making ends meet. Nearly a third of students work more than 20 hours a week. They are telling us it is impossible to just be a student and enjoy uni life anymore because they can barely afford to live. Too many students are living in poverty. Will the Labour government show people that there has actually been a change of government and raise the rate of income support payments to at least $88 a day?
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President, and thank you again, Senator Faruqi. Again, I've already listed a range of ways that the Albanese government is providing cost of living support to support a range of lower income earners, including students. Again, some of the fundamental issues that cause student poverty, which is a real issue and has been for a very long time in this country, one of the key causes of that is the extra cost that students are having to pay for accommodation. And again, it is within the Greens' power to do something about this. Maybe just for once, the Greens could think about being part of the solution to deliver on the things that they're complaining about, rather than thinking much more about having a protest out the front where they yell at people and ask for things that can never be delivered by any government in Australian history. We do recognise that lower income earners need support, need more support than they ever got under the coalition government, and that is exactly what we are doing. But in the meantime, the Greens should reverse their position and back our Housing Australia Fund to deliver the housing that is needed.
The time has expired. Senator Faruqi, second supplementary.
Minister, on 1 June, millions of Australians will be hit with more debt. Average student debt will balloon by almost $1,700. For others, it will soar by $3,000 and even $5,000. This means many more will be going backwards. They can't keep up because student debts are now going up faster than they can be paid off. Will the government intervene urgently to ensure that people are not hit with an obscene increase in their student debts on 1 June?
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Well, as Senator Faruqi may be aware, Minister Clare, the Education Minister, has asked his Universities and Higher Education Accord team to look at the issue of student debt. It's also important to explain the way that HECS and HELP works. It's not like a home loan or a personal loan from a bank where if interest rates go up, then your payments go up. It's built on an important principle that people pay what they can afford, and people don't pay more unless they earn more. That is the way that the system has always worked, and I remember Senator McAllister and I having debates about this when we were university students, about student fees that should be the right way to charge student fees. It's been an issue for a very long time. I'm not sure we were on the same side necessarily, Senator McAllister, on that. But we all grow and change our minds on things, even people like you and me. But these are serious issues. The Greens should help. The Greens should help, and the Greens should provide more social and affordable housing, which is what this Labor government is doing.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Pratt. Order in the chamber. Senator Pratt.
President, my question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Health and Aged Care, Senator Gallagher. Can the Minister please tell us what key health services have been left with funding that expires on June 30 this year, and what impact that expiring of funding would have on crucial service delivery to Australians that rely on these very services?
Thank you, Senator Pratt. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much, President. I thank Senator Pratt for the question and for a rare question on health in this chamber. But we know after almost a decade of cuts and neglect from those opposite, it's never been harder or more expensive to see a doctor. Our government is being upfront with Australians about the state of our healthcare system, because this crisis just didn't spring from thin air or happen overnight. It's the result of decisions made by the former government, a former government whose priority was to cut Medicare. Instead of funding critical health programs, they chose to put hundreds of measures in the budget on a timeline to be cut. For example, the My Health record system, a system that looks after the health records of 23 million Australians, runs out of funding on the 30th of June this year. No money. No money for My Health Record. 23 million Australians' health record. Just switch the money off. No money. No money for public dental, adult dental services beyond the 30th of June. Do those opposite honestly think that adults will not have dental problems on the 1st of July this year? Because that is really the reason why you would budget for them in this way. Remember, and we shouldn't be surprised, because the Leader of the Opposition, I think he was voted the worst health minister in 35 years, off a poll of 1,100 doctors. 1,100 doctors, because he wanted to put in place a GP tax, he wanted to increase the price of medicine, and he even wanted emergency departments to start charging for seeing people. That is what we had under those opposite, and we're getting around cleaning up the mess that's been left behind.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Pratt, first supplementary.
How is the Albanese government different from the former Coalition and Liberal government in its approach to responsible budget management?
Thank you, Senator Pratt. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, we are working through all of these unfunded programs that are ongoing. It has created significant pressure on the budget, which is precisely why they were dealt with in this way, to make the budget look better than it actually was, by having ongoing programs terminate and not impact in the later years of the forward estimates. So we are working through those. But we also know that when it comes to healthcare, it wasn't a priority for the former government. They stopped the indexation of GP visits for 6 years, and that is what has led to a lot of the crisis facing primary care. We are seeing GP surgeries close. We're seeing the GPs close around the country. People are finding it harder to get in, and when they do get in, they are paying more for seeing that doctor because of the crisis that was factored in over a long period of time.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Pratt, second supplementary.
Can the minister explain how the Albanese government is making healthcare more affordable and rebuilding the trust of Australians in the management of our budget?
Thank you, Senator. Minister.
And I thank Senator Pratt for the question, and I can inform the chamber of what we're doing, because we are cleaning up the mess, working through carefully, methodically, all of the programs that terminate. And we did do. I know you hate the fact that we went through line by line. We did go through line by line.
Minister, please resume your seat. I'm waiting for order. Minister, please continue.
Thank you. We started that line-by-line work in October, and we are continuing to go through it. As problems emerge, as departments bring forward their terminating programs, we are working through those. But we are also implementing our policies we took to the last election to invest in the healthcare of Australians. So, for example, lowering the price of medicines came in on the 1st of January, making a difference on the cost of living for millions of Australians. The Strengthening Medicare Task Force, which has a significant budget to invest in Medicare, and we're getting on with the job of investing in and opening those 50 urgent care centres. This is what you do when you're a government that believes in Medicare and believes in the strength of the health.
Senator Hanson.
Thank you very much. My question is to Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Senator Wong, in question time of September 2022, I asked you a question in relation to immigration. In response to the question, you said Labor had increased immigration to 195,000 per year as a consequence of capacity constraints in the economy. Will the minister please explain to the Australian people why Labor has let immigration blow out to a record 650,000 this financial year and the next, as reported in The Australian today?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Wong.
Well, can I first thank Senator Hanson for the question, and if she will permit me, can I say how lovely it is to be back, and to thank everyone who sent me good wishes.
Minister Wong.
I thought you liked me.
Senator Hanson. Order.
No, the minister asked if I permit her. I don't permit her. I've got only 2 minutes for an answer, and I want an answer not about how well...
Resume your seat. Senator Hanson, resume your seat. I think the minister is going to your question.
do endeavour to answer your questions, Senator Hanson. I did want to just acknowledge the work of those behind me, particularly Senator Farrell, who I think did very well in my absence. I think my response to you, Senator Hanson, was to refer to the net overseas migration figures. I am advised that the increase in net overseas migration is 304,000 for the year ending September 2022. There is also an increase in planned permanent migration in 22-23, which of course is a commitment from the Jobs and Skills Summit. I'd make the point, and I assume my answer to which you're referring was making the same point, that we obviously do have some capacity constraints in the Australian economy, and in fact ensuring that we have an appropriate level of, particularly of permanent migration, is one of the ways we can grow our economy and one of the ways in which we can ensure that some of those capacity constraints driving inflation are dealt with. I'm sorry, Senator Rennick?
Senator Rennick.
There's a reference to... So what I would say to you, Senator Hanson, is that this government, in its approach to net overseas migration, will always be guided by the national interest, and there will obviously be a balance of questions that the government has to address, which both go to skill shortages, but also some of the issues that we've been discussing for some weeks now, including availability of housing supply. But the government will always make decisions on migration in the national interest.
Thank you, Senator Wong. Senator Hanson.
Labor's Housing Future Fund plan to build 30,000 new homes in the next 5 years will obviously do nothing to alleviate Australia's housing and rental crisis in light of the fact approximately 700,000 homes are needed. Minister, when will Labor finally commit to making the massive cuts to immigration necessary to reduce demand for housing so that Australians already living here can have a home rather than living in their cars, tents or even on the streets?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Wong.
Again, I thank Senator Hanson for the question, and I would make the point that one of the reasons the government wants to bring forward the Housing Australia Future Fund is to ensure, the Housing Australia Fund is to ensure that we can contribute to greater supply. And it is, I think, very deeply concerning that in the face of some of what is occurring in the housing sector, that we have the coalition, those opposite, who I know are struggling with the reality of opposition, very angry, as can be, as is evinced by the sorts of interjections we get, simply saying no, and the Greens saying it's not enough. And as a consequence, there are people in this country who would be benefited by increasing housing supply, which may be left wanting. Of course, always more can be done, Senator Hanson, and I think we all understand that. And as I said, these are some of the issues that the government will grapple with.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Hanson, second supplementary.
At least I congratulate you on attempting to answer the question, unlike Senator Farrell, who didn't have much to say. On the Sunrise program this morning, David Koch interviewed...
Senator Hanson, please resume your seat. Order. I am not able to hear Senator Hanson's question because of the disorder and noise in the chamber. Senator Hanson, if you wouldn't mind starting the actual question again, please.
On the Sunrise program this morning, David Koch interviewed a 16-year-old boy named Caleb, who, with his father, has been forced to live in a tent in a Brisbane park because they cannot find rental accommodation. What message do you offer homeless teenagers like Caleb while your government makes the housing crisis worse with record-high immigration?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Wong.
Thank you. First, in relation to Senator Farrell, my observation of Senator Farrell was outstanding while I was away. And I'm very grateful. I was very grateful for his leadership, as I'm sure all of my colleagues are. Senator Hanson, what I would say is this, that if people in this chamber are really concerned about housing, then they would stop their opposition to our housing fund. they would recognise that even if they don't agree with all aspects of government policy.
Senator Hanson.
Relevance. We're not talking about the housing and backing, the opposition backing government policy. I asked what her message is to Khalib about these. What message is she going to give to this teenager?
Senator Hanson, Minister Wong is being relevant to your question. Minister, please continue.
Well, my message is, yes, we do need to increase the supply of housing. This government went to the election with a very clear policy, a set of policies around increasing the supply of housing, because we on this side of the chamber care about social housing, we care about improving access to decent housing, and we care about what is happening in the rental market. And we understand that one of the key ways in which government can do that is to...
Please resume your seat. Minister, Senator Reynolds.
Thank you very much, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. On Monday and again today in question time, the Minister criticised terminating funding for My Health Record. Given this somewhat pious grandstanding, why did not the Minister address this in Labor's budget last October, for which the Minister claimed that she went through every single budget item line by line?
Thank you, Senator Reynolds. Minister.
Thank you.
Order. Order.
Thank you, President.
Order.
Stop yelling at me.
Minister, please resume your seat. Please resume your seat and wait for silence in the chamber. Senator Watt, I've just called the chamber to order. Minister Gallagher, please.
Thank you. Thank you, President. I thank Senator Reynolds for the question. And is this the best that they've got? That the terminating measures that they put in the budget, the only criticism is that we didn't get to the hundreds of terminating measures, the booby traps, the funding cliffs, the zombie measures that you used to dress up your budget to make it look it was something that it wasn't. Is the best that you've got is that we didn't deal with all of those messes, the entire mess that is the budget vandals that you had, is that it wasn't all fixed in October, that we didn't fix up all your messes in October. Well, I'll take that. We didn't, because there's so many of them. We dealt with the first bit in October, just as we did with our spending audit. We did what we could in October and we said we would come back and look at this through the budget in May, and that is what we are doing. But we are also highlighting the fact that those opposite booby-trapped the budget, dressed it up before an election, pretended that they were these responsible fiscal managers, when at the very same time they were hiding pressures. They had zombie measures in from 2016 that they still had in their bottom line, even though they were never going to get through this Senate. $4.1 billion of mess in October that we cleaned up, and you will see more of us cleaning up the mess, more of the results of cleaning up the mess in May, because there was so much mess it couldn't all be done in the first economic update.
Senator Reynolds, first supplementary.
Thank you very much, President. This Monday, the Minister also criticised terminating funding for the Australian Radioactive Waste Agency, adding, "Do you reckon they might need ongoing funding to keep their programs going?" Now, remember that, colleagues, because given the minister's grandstanding yet again, why didn't the minister address this in Labor's budget last October, for which, remember, what did the minister say? She had gone through the budget line by line. So did you miss this one too in your budget analysis?
Senator, order. I've called order. Senator Brown, I've called order. Minister, please resume your seat. Minister Scarr, Senator Scarr, I've just called order. Minister, please continue.
Thank you very much. And can I thank Senator Reynolds for highlighting the mess that they left us. I really appreciate it. I've been looking forward to Dorothy's on terminating measures. I didn't expect to get a Dorothy from Senator Reynolds on terminating measures. We went through and made decisions in the time we could for October. We were elected in May. We went straight into putting forward the October budget. We did what we could. I think we indicated at the time that there was more work to be done, and there will continue to be work to be done as we uncover these issues, as agencies bring them forward through the processes of the budget, and we deal with them, because that's what responsible governments do. Responsible governments don't have zombie measures propping up their budget. Responsible governments don't fail to address pressures that are about to hit the budget. Responsible governments do it the way we are doing.
Has expired. Senator Reynolds, second supplementary.
Thank you very much, President. And in light of all of your comments, the dog ate my homework, what have we got? We've got zombies, we've got booby traps. In light of all of your comments on terminating measures, can you guarantee now, in light of all of those comments, that the 2023-24 budget will have no terminating measure, and if not, why not?
Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, the point I'm making is about ongoing programs that are clearly going to continue. There is a place. I'm answering the question. I'm answering the question that Senator Reynolds asked. There is a place for time-limited measures in a budget. Well, there are. For example, if there's a need to fund something...
Please resume your seat. Order on my left. Order. Order. Are you seeking a point of order, Senator Reynolds?
Could I just ask...
Senator Reynolds, resume your seat. I'm still waiting. Order. Minister, please continue.
Thank you. Well, those opposite will have to wait to see the budget, but I can tell you that they'll see a budget where responsible decisions are being made about programs that are ongoing, where they've been underfunded, where they've been neglected, where they're being used as a way of propping up a budget to pretend those costs aren't coming. You will see the government working carefully to deal with those, and they are a significant pressure on the budget, and they will contribute to significant expenditure in fixing them up.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Thorpe.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister responsible for, or acting for the Minister for Indigenous Australians. My question is regarding First Nations people targeted by UPLA funeral insurance. Many who now cannot afford to bury their loved ones, many of whom are sitting in morgues. We've had elders sitting in morgues for 2 months because of the scam insurance company. The Albanese government, through your Minister of Indigenous Australians, committed to providing a resolution to those impacted by this scheme. And the October budget did include some money, but only affected a small percentage of people, which is now going to run out on November 30. When will the Labor government end the trauma and the suffering of tens of thousands of Aboriginal people who've been ripped off by this scheme? I understand it's not in the May budget. Why not?
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, and I thank Senator Thorpe for the question about UPLA and the situation that thousands of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island families were left in the lurch when that funeral insurance scheme collapsed. We have been working through all of the issues around providing, I think, support to those that have been affected. As at the 17th of March 2023, the program has received 220 applications, with 186 of these being approved, and the program has paid out $1.5 million in grants to 170 recipients to support First Nations families in conducting sorry business. There are a small number of applications currently being processed or awaiting payment. The average processing time for an application from lodgement to payment is about 6 weeks, and they are taking 6 weeks on average as we are dealing with a company that has collapsed, and there are significant record-keeping issues. So I would say to Senator Thorpe that we are working as fast as we can. We recognise, the awful situation many people have found themselves in with the collapse of UPLA. And we are trying to work as hard as we can to make sure that we can resolve it for all of those that were being placed in this terrible position by the failure of this business.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Thorpe, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. That's some small, if any, comfort to the elders sitting in morgues right now. 170 people you've supported. We've got more than 10,000, 20,000 people that have been affected. What solutions are you actually pursuing to get elders out of these morgues and ensure that a fair, enduring and culturally appropriate resolution is reached for all of those impacted?
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Minister.
Thank you. Well, we are working as fast as we can, and we are acutely aware of the need to resolve this as fast as we can. I would say to Senator Thorpe, if there are particular families or individuals that you would like to advocate on behalf of, or are experiencing, some, a situation which might be we could assist with, then I extend that offer on behalf of the minister responsible. But I can absolutely tell you the government has had a number of conversations about this UPLA and the collapse and what it means for those who have passed and their families. And that is why we have moved as quickly as we could to provide assurance that we would deal with the families involved, including those that had passed away and were in morgues.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Thorpe, second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you for the invitation. I will take that up. So what do you say to those First Nations people who have lost their hard-earned money? We heard today $25,000 has been gone from one family. Some of them now living in debt due to UPLA's collapse, debts that have been enabled and ignored by successive governments for over 2 decades.
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Minister Gallagher.
Well, that's why the government has sought to put in place arrangements to provide security to those families, acknowledging that we won't be able necessarily to deal with all of the trauma and difficulty and cost associated with the money that's gone into those arrangements. I know that the Minister for the Assistant Treasurer, the Minister for Financial Services, is looking at other issues that had led to this, the spruiking of these arrangements and how it's being marketed. But I would say again, I think the focus immediately on coming to government and getting the full briefing and understanding of what was happening and the fact that there hadn't been arrangements put in place to deal with it. The priority was to deal particularly with those who had loved ones, family members who had passed, and to make sure we put in place a suitable arrangement to deal with that. I would say the average number of days between an application being lodged and a payment being made is 28 days
has
now.
Expired. Senator White.
My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Communications, Senator Watt. We know it is fundamental that our online world is a safe and inclusive environment. The eSafety Commissioner plays a key role in regulating the online world and achieving these objectives. What challenges does the eSafety Commissioner face in supporting the government's objectives?
Thank you, Senator White. Minister Watt.
Thanks, President. Sorry, Senator Henderson.
Order across the chamber. Order across the chamber. Senator Watt, I'll draw you to Senator
Sorry,
White.
Senator Henderson was just interjecting. I wasn't quite sure what she was saying.
Question.
I thank Senator White for the question. Recently, when I was in Darwin, my staff and I were following a Land Cruiser along the Esplanade that had a "Do It for Dolly" sticker on the back. It reminded me of the harrowing experience of Dolly Everett that no child should endure, and the work that has been done since then to improve online safety. I do give the government former government credit, as does the Prime Minister, for the work they did in this space. And maintaining online safety is a core priority for the Albanese government. That's why we are supporting the eSafety Commissioner, Australia's independent regulator for online safety, particularly as the eSafety Commissioner undertakes critically important work to raise the bar for online safety and hold platforms to account for their actions to keep Australians safe. Whether it is online, tackling child sexual exploitation material, combating cyberbullying and harassment, or making dating apps safer, I think we can all agree that the work they do is absolutely critical for our society. However, despite the eSafety Commissioner's important role, I think senators would be astounded that eSafety has been operating without funding certainty thanks to decisions taken by those opposite. The fact is— sorry, Senator Henderson, are you interjecting? Right.
Senator Watt. Senator Watt.
The fact is eSafety has been relying on non-ongoing or terminating funding. Sorry, Senator McGrath. Sorry, interjecting.
Minister Watt, please resume your seat. Senators, order. Order. Order across the chamber. Senator Wong. Senator Henderson. Order across the chamber. Minister Watt, please. Senator Henderson.
I just wanted to put on the record that Senator Wong did actually invite me to say something on the record
you know very
about this
well.
matter.
Senator Henderson, Senator Wong, you and every other senator in this place knows that it is disorderly to call out across the chamber. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. As I say, I think senators would be astounding that eSafety has been operating without funding certainty thanks to decisions taken by those opposite. The fact is, eSafety has been relying on non-ongoing or terminating funding for years, and this was a deliberate design feature of the former Liberal and National Party government's budget policy. Can you believe that eSafety's base funding of $10.3 million has never been increased since eSafety was established in 2015, and that despises widening powers every year?
Has expired. Senator White, first supplementary.
We know that funding cliffs were a deliberate design feature of the Liberal National Government's budget strategy. What does the funding profile look like for eSafety going forward?
Thank you, Senator White. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. Thanks, Senator White. After the 30th of June this year, it is astounding to know that thanks to funding decisions by the now opposition, eSafety and the eSafety Commissioner would face a funding cliff. In the Coalition's last budget, the overall funding for eSafety was forecast to drop from $53.8 million down to $23.3 million, a more than 50% decrease in funding to the eSafety Commissioner of our country. Like every budget announced in the last government, they went for short-term, non-ongoing measures and never addressed the structural underfunding of key agencies. Did the Coalition really think that once the clock turned over to the 1st of July this year, all the online exploitation material would just vanish from the internet? Did they really think that all of the misuse of dating apps— sorry?
Senator Henderson.
Sorry, Senator Henderson. That all the misuse of dating apps—
Senator Henderson, I've called you to order about 3 times. Interjections across the chamber are disorderly and they're disrespectful. Minister Watt, please continue.
These are the funding cliffs that we find littered throughout the budget, even when it comes to important issues like eSafety, another mess Labor has to fix.
The time for answering has expired. Senator White, second supplementary.
Minister, I guess it's fair to say that Labor has been left to clean up the mess left by those opposite. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to support online safety for Australians?
Thank you, Senator White. Minister Watt.
Thanks, Senator White. And you're right. I mean, all week we have highlighted examples of the former government's deliberate design feature of funding cliffs throughout the budget in my own portfolios of agriculture when it comes to biosecurity, emergency management, e-safety, my health records. The list goes on and on and on, where this government thought that miraculously the whole world would change on the 1st of July and important permanent functions were not going to need ongoing funding, and this is another example of it. The Albanese government is now undertaking the substantive work to ensure that the Online Safety Act is successfully implemented, together with the E-Safety Commissioner. E-Safety has been undertaking important work in relation to the basic online safety expectations outlined in the Act. Recently, they issued a second set of reporting notices to 7 digital platforms on the steps they are taking to tackle online child sexual exploitation material. Every day there will be new challenges that emerge, and the Albanese government is committed to continuing the important work to make online activity a safer place.
Senator McKenzie.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport and Regional Development and Local Government, Senator Watt. On the 9th of February this year, the Minister categorically ruled out any changes to the diesel fuel rebate in the May budget. Will the Minister also categorically rule out further delays to road and rail projects in the upcoming May budget?
Minister Watt.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator McKenzie. Again, we could have a discussion about the funding cliffs that were littered throughout the budget that was run by yourselves in agriculture and infrastructure departments and things like that when it came to funding. But of course, the future of all projects in the infrastructure portfolio will be revealed when the budget is revealed. And I know we're about to enter that period where we're going to see scare campaign after scare campaign from the opposition about what may or may not happen in the budget. We've actually got a government in place now that has a responsible budget practices rather than funding cliffs, rather than booby traps, rather than mirages of back-in-black budgets that turn out to be not so back-in-black at all. We're not out there preparing coffee cups, unlike some.
Thank you, Minister. Please resume your seat. Senator McKenzie.
On relevance, Madam President, the Minister he has already ruled in and ruled out the diesel fuel rebate previously with respect to the May budget. My specific question was around further cuts and delays to infrastructure projects in the upcoming budget.
Thank you, and I believe the Minister was being relevant. Minister, please continue.
Thanks, President. Now, what I can say, to add to the comments that I've already made, is that the Albanese government is ensuring that infrastructure spending is targeted and aligned with current capacity and resource availability in Australia's construction market. And what I can always also tell you is that, unlike certain other people in this chamber and in this parliament, the Albanese government and our ministers will not be using colour-coded spreadsheets when it comes to allocating infrastructure funding. You won't be finding reports from the Auditor-General about that kind of activity. What we will actually be doing is allocating infrastructure funding on the basis of need. And you know what? I know it's a bit of a touchy subject over in that little part of the building. I know it's a touchy subject. Colour-coded spreadsheets and sports routes and infrastructure routes and regional routes, urban congestion routes, car park routes. I mean, there's just so many routes you forget the numbers. But this government actually takes using taxpayers' money seriously. We intend to use it transparently and honestly. And what that actually means is that we will fund projects that are not in Labor's seats. What an incredible suggestion that would be. What an incredible suggestion to have a government that is prepared to allocate money on the basis of need rather than on what colour they're coded on a spreadsheet.
Thank you, Minister. Senator McKenzie, first supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. The thin skin. On the 1st of March 2023, Minister for Infrastructure told the National Press Club that she wanted Infrastructure Australia to, and I quote, produce a more refined, more targeted infrastructure priority list. Will Minister Watt categorically rule out projects being cut from the infrastructure priority list in the upcoming May budget?
Thank you, Senator McKenzie. Minister Watt.
Well, thank you, Senator McKenzie, for reminding us of the important institution that is Infrastructure Australia, an institution that was created by a former infrastructure minister of this country, a fellow by the name of Anthony Albanese. And the reason that Minister Albanese, as he then was, brought in Infrastructure Australia was to overcome the rorts of the infrastructure budget that we'd seen under the Howard government, to bring back independence when it comes to decisions about infrastructure funding. I know it's a
Minister
touchy
Watt,
issue.
please resume your seat. Senator McKenzie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On relevance, again, to cuts to the budget for projects. The minister has gone nowhere near the question, either previously or now.
Thank you, Senator McKenzie. I'll just rule on the point of order, Senator Wong, unless you wanted to.
No, if I could make this submission, President, the senator herself referenced Infrastructure Australia. She can hardly complain when the minister utilises that reference in his response. He's clearly been directly relevant.
Thank you, Senator Wong. Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, President. Further to the point of order, and this goes back to the change that was made a number of years ago to the standing orders that shifted from answers to questions having to be relevant to answers to questions having to be directly relevant. And I submit, President, that a history lesson on the establishment of Infrastructure Australia, just because Infrastructure Australia was mentioned in a question, does not make it directly relevant.
Order.
Direct relevance actually requires turning to the substance of the question asked, not picking one or two words out of it for the convenience of the minister.
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. Order. 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 May I suggest to leaders that they allow me to rule on the point of order? I was going to remind Senator McKenzie that the minister did reference Infrastructure Australia, and I was going to draw the minister to the second part of your question. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President, and I can assure Senator McKenzie and the entire Australian people that they can rely on the Albanese government to make targeted infrastructure investments in a fashion that we haven't been used to over the last 10 years. And as I was saying, it was the Labor government that invented Infrastructure Australia to overcome the rorting of infrastructure budgets we'd seen from the Howard government. We've now had to restructure Infrastructure Australia because it had been distorted by the stacking with Liberal and National Party mates under the former government. There's a bit of a pattern here, isn't it? Every time there's a Liberal National government, it's stacking with mates, it's rorts. Every time Labor comes in, we have to clean up the mess, and we're doing it all over again.
Senator McKenzie, second supplementary.
Thank you. Can the minister categorically rule out any further cuts and delays to regional Queensland road projects to pay for the Albanese government's $7 billion Olympic Games venue deal with the Queensland Labor Premier?
Thank you, Senator McKenzie. Senator Watt.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator McKenzie. Senator Gallagher has reminded me that the funding that was going to be provided for Olympic infrastructure that is going to be happening in the great city of Brisbane, in the great state of Queensland, where did that funding first come from, Senator Gallagher? Was there some commitment made by the former government about that? Was it the Liberal National government that was going to contribute 50-50 funding to the Olympics? Or was it just the Liberals who supported the Olympics infrastructure funding and not the Nationals? Or was it some of the Nationals and not some of the Liberals? I mean, seriously, work out what page you're on. You're now up here asking us about funding that your own government committed to do.
Please resume your order. Order. Minister Watt, please continue. Senator Canavan, I have just called the chamber to order. And Minister Watt, please continue.
And I am very proud of the fact that I, Senator Chisholm and Senator Green played an instrumental role in making sure that the Rocky Ring Road project is going ahead, and the contractors have actually supported the actions. We had a few little people out there in their usual cosplay dress-ups outside the parliament who did absolutely nothing, and a few people who actually got to work and got the job done.
Senator Wong. Order.
Thank you, President. I ask that further questions be placed on notice.